and told us world walkers, it's kind of up to her will now to see if she's strong enough to pull through. So,
but she came back, and that brings us to Mr. Smibs, his story. So we already talked about how he, was terrified of the Zavros because of his childhood. Well, Nicodemus thought it was a good idea to get all of his Zavros and gang up on him to help him face his fear.
I'm so mad about that.
Unasked for. And so in the middle of the battle arena, without any warning, the 3 Blightveins went to attack him. And of course he was terrified, and he's swinging his sword, and he failed at his fear. Mm-hmm. And so Nicodemus called it off, because I think he really did have good intentions, although it was foolish. He called up the Zavros and said, hey, you can become a clown in my circus, or you're going to be catatonic by the end of the night. The choice is up to you. And so that put him in a very hard situation where he, at that point, he went to Natan.
I think it's Natan, but honestly,
okay.
I don't know.
Natan, who hangs out in the coven. He's a member of the, what is it called? The Hologuard, who are normally humans, but he's actually an Ottoman who's, I guess, become repentant. He now is fighting with them. And he offered Mr. Smibs the opportunity to give up his soul and kind of end his life on his own terms.
The thing with Natan is he feels really bad. He wishes that he didn't have to feast on human souls. So for him, any soul that he takes very, very heavily. He will have them write their name down in a book that he has, or he'll write their name for them with their consent. Someday he hopes that when he dies, their souls will be released.
Doesn't he also remember their stories? I think I heard that as well.
Mm-hmm. And he goes through their stories constantly in his mind, trying to remember them. The thing with the Hologuard is they're kind of the rebels back on Dayloth. They're the ones who fight against the 7 sects, the 7 houses, to try and free the humans. And Natan was able to join them and kind of help them on their way. And several of the Hologuard showed up in Evermore because Seneca was trying to open a portal to Dayloth. And so it would open, and then members of this Hologuard would come through. And so that's how they came to be in Evermore.
I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. Smibs decided to go with that choice. And it was really it was really heartfelt to see him go around and say his goodbyes. And we sang some shanties for him. He was able to give a speech. It was really nice to get that moment with him. And we also realized that if he's going to die anyway, Sir Kaliri can feed off of him. And so she agreed to it. So the 3 of them went off to Drakenhaven and kind of did the deed there. And it was really kind of a solemn moment. And then they came back knowing we knew that it was done. And it was kind of a sad night. But yeah.
It was definitely a hard moment to have to ask Mr. Smibs, be like, hey, because his greatest fear is being bitten and turned into a vampire. That was his greatest fear.
Yeah.
And so we were literally asking him, hey, can you face your greatest fear and help give life to Kaliri?
I wish that could have undone it.
I wish.
Yeah. I'm sad he's gone. I liked Mr. Smibs.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to, we had a thief in town that was stealing fear. So we should give some context that Seneca was a kind of crazy scientist with the circus who Nicodemus would harvest people's fears, give it to Seneca somehow, and Seneca would refine it into gems or use it to power his machines or research. And so they had this relationship of working together. And Seneca was really pushing to get more fear. That was his main goal. And so he was often berating Nicodemus to harvest fear faster. And there was a thief. So who wants to share more about the thief? Did any of us know that plot very well?
I did not know that plot at all.
I think it's Audrey. I just know that at one point Goose was being blamed for it.
Yes.
But everyone was like, Goose couldn't have done it. He doesn't even know what he's doing half the time. Yes. It's crazy.
Goose was a character that had like no short-term memory recall and like no long-term memory recall. He was very sweet, but could never remember details about anything. And so the reason why he was blamed is because he didn't have an alibi, because
Oh,
He couldn't remember.
what he had been doing. And since he was the only one without an alibi, they're like, well, it must have been him. So he was put in the gamble for a few days, I think. It was really sad.
but
All
it
right,
ended up being Svetlana, because they found lead lining her tent, which
Yes.
is the metal that prevents against conjuration.
Yeah. So it was this kind of funny moment. I found him and he was kind of freaking out. And I was like, why? He's like, I need to talk to Kieran. I'm like, well, I'm not him, so I'm sorry. Turns out that he had remembered that he could do a certain type of magic. They went and kind of looked through the tents. They went through Svetlana's tent, and they did. They found lead lining the tent. I believe they found some of the jewels. And it was in the middle of one of her performances with the fire dancers. So they were like, as soon as this show is over, we're gonna go get her. And they did.
Now, was it because she was stealing those things because she wanted to somehow rule the other houses or something like that?
I believe she felt that it would kind of make her more powerful, more beautiful, that kind of a thing. It was kind of a greed situation. But when they found out, they did kind of cast her aside in the sense that they gave her to Kaliri. So she
took away her illusion magic.
Yes, they took away her illusion magic. Pretty much what happens is Kalari actually decided she was going to go to Daloth and fight for the humans there. And there she could also feed on souls from the 7 groups of beings. She could feed on them and instead of having to feed on like an innocent human. What happened with Svetlana is they're like, take her with you, please. We don't want her anymore. So Kalari did end up taking her when they opened the portal back to Daloth. Kalari took her. And pretty much, I believe their plan was just kind of have her be an outcast in like the edges of Daloth kind of a thing. That or use her as like information.
I heard she was going to be banished to like the lowest level of the Hollows.
Yes. And I believe that because they took away her magic, she would also start to grow old and ugly. And she was very upset that she would not be seen as beautiful and would be a hag. So,
is there anything else people want to share as highlights they experienced during lore?
There was the situation with Thaddeus and Sauron.
Yeah, so I was actually going to start talking about that.
Yeah, go ahead, cousin.
Oh, I'm going to break Audrey again. This will be fun.
A lot of things broke me this lore.
From what I understand, this all happened in the last week because I was able to be there for the whole week because that was my week off. And instead of being Maya, I brought Car, so I was being part of the Knights, got back in with the Knights. And when Aran first came to Earth, he was on Audrey, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you will. He brought his little squad on protection detail of the matriarch. The other Knights saw Evermore as a possible Mythosian military outpost, where if you control the portals, you can control the realms. And Aran did not agree with that. So he challenged Commander
Magnus, I believe.
Magnus. So he could not order him to stop because they were the equal rank, but he challenged him to a duel, a fair duel, and Aran overpowered him, but Magnus would not yield. And so Aran was forced to take Magnus's life, a lifelong friend of him, and it was really hard from just talking to Aran. It was really hard for him to do that. And the other Knights agreed with Magnus, and they decided to attack Aran. They didn't agree with what the duel was settled with, and he ended up taking all of their lives as well because they would not yield.
That's some serious stuff.
Thaddeus was Magnus's squire.
I'm not sure if he was squire or if Magnus was just a really great mentor.
Was a mentor and was his commander.
Mm-hmm.
And actually Magnus promoted Thaddeus to sergeant during the Goblin Wars. And when this information came to light, Thaddeus was about to do some rash thinking, and he decided to step away and rethink about what the next step needed to be. And that was so he brought court-martial against Iran for the wrongful death of a knight.
Because this was the first time that Thaddeus had heard about these other knights' deaths.
And he's been in town for a year.
Yeah.
So
Some trust was broken.
a lot of trust was broken between the two. And so we held the court martial. Everybody that was a rank 3 or higher, a rank knight or higher, was able to cast a vote.
I didn't cast a vote.
Well, I believe this was after you got outed, after you outed yourself, my friend.
Yeah.
But you were there, weren't you?
I wasn't present. No, I was doing something else. Yeah.
Okay. Sir Kaliri was being the judge, if you would say. She brought forth several world walkers to bring up their thoughts of Sir Aran, and it was almost unanimous that he did nothing wrong, that he was justified in taking other knights' lives. The only nay was Sykes. I don't know why Sykes did that. I didn't talk to him. Did you talk to him about that, Audrey?
Yeah, so for Sykes, it wasn't that he was like, oh, Iran needs to be punished. Sykes said that he's been in a similar situation and he wishes that someone had said no so that he would have been able to face punishment for what he did.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense for Sykes. Thaddeus challenged Iran to a duel. No armor, real swords, to death or submit. And so that was on everybody's mind for the next day. When it came time to that, I saw Iran and Piper, because Iran was worried about Piper, about what would happen to her if he fell. When the duel took place, I noticed that Iran had Piper's scarf on his arm. Did you hear that conversation between Iran and Piper?
No, I was with the rest of the World Walker Knights on the other side of the arena.
But at this point, they were
context really quickly on who Piper is for those who might be new.
Okay, Piper used to be a bard. She is now a free bard. She is very musically inclined. She plays the bagpipes. She plays any musical instrument she can play, from what I've seen. For the past year, Piper and Iran have been courting. Story time. It's been very entertaining to watch Sir Iran read these fairy tales from Earth, and he's like, wow, that's dumb. Wow, that shouldn't happen. But they came to the point where they eventually got married. They fulfilled all the requirements for Mythosia marriage, for Piper to be married. So Piper is now a lady. If you ever told Sir Kaliri that she was a lady, she would go off on you, because a lady is a title for somebody that marries a knight. And so that is Piper and Iran's backstory for those who don't know those two. And that duel, between Iran and Thaddeus was an amazing choreographed duel. They confronted each other, and each one got an upper hand. It came down to the point where Thaddeus had Iran down with Iran's sword, his sword has never taken a life. And he's like, not that sword, because that was Rooster's sword, if I remember correctly. And so Thaddeus grabbed his own sword, and he was about to, and they were talking about Magnus and how great of a knight he was. And Thaddeus said, you're right, he's a greater knight. And even though he had an upper hand, he submitted to Commander Iran. I know everybody was worried about, okay, we're going to have another death on our hands. I think that forged their friendship more than anything has before.
I was actually surprised that Sir Iran made it out, just because he's been around for so long, just out of character reasons. Out of character reasons. Why? Mad props to Danny, who plays Sir Iran, being able to do that for 2 years.
Can I say something about Danny's ability to perform as Sir Iran, actually? So we had Evermore as a special guest last year to LTUE, this convention for creatives for science fiction and fantasy. And then we were in a panel where the showrunner of the time said, Danny, I want you to stand up here and use your real voice. And he talked with his real voice, and all of the Evermore staff went, I thought you were really Scottish. Even backstage, you're always in a Scottish accent. When you're at costume fittings, you're always using that accent. I thought they hired a real Scottish guy to play this night. So Danny was just amazing at being in character anytime he was behind the scenes or anything with Evermore. I loved that big.
And he is also blind. He doesn't wear contacts in park, from what I understand. Danny has to wear glasses, and I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please let us know. I've been wrong many times before. But that was the duel. It was amazing to watch. I took video of that. I took several videos of those nights, and I threw them on the Evermore community page. I have a fun story. After
we also need to mention the heist.
Oh yes, the heist of Restgiver. I have a fun story about that. And if Sly was here, he would have an even more fun story about this. Besides me, who was all involved in that Everlevel quest?
I was just kind of tunnel-minded with Marzi and Titus for most of my time.
Yes, Marzi is another sad story.
Oh yeah. You're talking about the heist, though, right?
Yeah, the heist of Restgiver for the Black Arts.
Yeah, I'll let you tell it, but let me tell you my little not contribution, but my experience with it. People were gossiping all around park saying there's something going on, and no one would tell me anything. And so I kept going around like, what's the secret thing that's happening? Something about a heist? And someone was like, oh, just ask the Coven about the Blackheart heist. And so I went and asked Calder about it. He's like, oh, I didn't know about this. Go find out more information. And then I realized, oh crap, this is a secret from the Coven. That's as far as my involvement was.
So I was walking around town, and I happened to see Chance, and he's like, you should go, if you have any love for Ganarin, you should go talk to him. I'm like, I already have. I know. So because Ganarin, one of the Rangers, I believe Sly spoke about him in our first episode. He is an amazing archer. He would run the archery tournaments, and so I would always participate in the archery tournaments, and I got to know Ganarin that way. Even though I've never been a ranger, I probably will never ever be a ranger.
Yeah, who would want to be a ranger?
Yeah, who would want to be a ranger? I wish Sly could hear this.
I'm a ranger. I like codes.
Yeah, you're a pirate. So Ganarin had made a contract with
Lucius.
Yes, Lucius, when he was younger and he was starving. So he wrote a contract. He made a contract with Lucius so he wouldn't starve. But on his end, he would have to kill anybody Lucius said.
Can we talk about Lucius for a second? I wish I would have gotten to know him more. I only met him on one occasion, and he looked like a goblin, but he spoke with a southern accent. Super slimy character. I guess he just makes deals with people that kind of like Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he reminds me a lot of Rumpelstiltskin. He's magical. He makes magical contracts.
Deals you don't want to make.
Yep, and
from Jimmy Bronson.
Yes, Jimmy traded his accent for his mother's cookies.
What, Jimmy? What are you doing?
And Marzi made a deal with him.
Yes.
What was Marzi? Oh yeah, that's right. Marzi's deal was horrible. Okay, yes. Tell us more.
But so Ganarin made the deal, and he wanted to get out of it. And so he went to one of the new Blackhearts in town, Frances. She deals with the occult, mainly magical contracts, being able to amend them, break them, make them. And so he went and talked to her, and he was considered rude, according to her. And so originally she was going to charge him 5,000 gold. And if you don't know Ganarin, he is not swimming in money. And he was rude. And she's like, okay, no more friends and family discount, 10,000 gold. And a side note about her is she doesn't need the money. She is extremely wealthy. And so it's all about the principle of making the deal. And so he was kept on thinking about it. How am I going to make this 10,000 gold? He talked to me about it. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you can do something for her and get back to friends and family. Some other world walkers found 5,000 gold for him. And then she's like, okay.
How did they find 5,000 gold?
I think it was some item in the mercantile.
There was actually, I know about this one.
Yeah, this was the chest, right?
Yeah, the chest. So Corbin Silvertongue was a world walker with us last year. She now plays a character in the park. She had done do they call it an ever level quest?
It was the ever level quest. It was Corbin, Kirsten, and the World Talkers.
They went on this huge quest that was just for them, and they found this chest full of gold. It was some pirate's gold, and they were able to keep all that gold. Well, that chest still exists in story, and so Corbin sent a note that I think Derek and someone else, maybe it was Crow, Derek and Crow were able to get, and they were able to follow a quest to find that. I think there was a riddle that led them to the mercantile, and they were able to find that chest of gold. So they had the money to pay Ganarin.
That is really cool.
Yeah. And so for the other 5,000 gold, Francis had a contract from Killian to get a hold of Restgiver for 5,000 gold. Because
should we give a little backstory as to why?
Yeah.
Why they wanted, I did not know why they wanted Restgiver, why the contract was out.
Yeah, so when I was talking earlier about the 3 groups of knights that were fighting against the vampires, there were 3 survivors. There was Gwyneth, Tristan, and a third one named Arik Shadeworthy. Yes, so Arik is a predecessor, the ancestor of Killian, who's the leader of the Blackheart Hunters. And so because
and Killian is the leader of the Blackhearts who was in Park Lore 2018.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. And so because Killian carries the name Shadeworthy, and Tristan was Tristan Shadeworthy, Killian believed that the sword was her birthright, even though Gwyneth had the sword because it was her brother's. So it was kind of this like iffy thing about like who actually owned the sword, because Gwyneth gave it to the Grey family. But for Killian, she believes that it's her birthright to own the sword. So that's why she had like a contract out on it. And it was like a very, very big, expensive contract. So
yeah, it was 5,000 gold, silver levels only. Silver level is the highest level a Blackheart can get. At the same time that this is going on, my ward, when I became a shield knight, when I first became it, I chose to be Drake's shield knight. Well, as we all know, Drake's no longer in town, and I asked, what do I got to do? And they said, you have to find somebody new. And I love Kulin. Kulin is an amazing character. I love what she does. And so I went and pledged myself to her. And she has been tasked by Lady Grey to protect Restgiver. And then I go back to, and I'm like, okay. And she said, go talk to the Knights, because I'm worried about the security of Restgiver, and I'm talking to them. And another World Walker says, oh, I know why. Somebody's trying to steal it. I'm like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. And so for several hours that night, I was torn between, do I follow my honor of a knight and inform Kulin of this plot to abscond what she has been paid to protect, or do I help my friend get out of this contract? I talked to several World Walkers. I talked to many trying to figure out this moral dilemma. And I ended up following my knight's code and telling Kulin about it. And later on that night, Ganarin comes up and says, Master Cars, I have to tell you something. I'm like, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't want to betray your trust, but I am a shield knight to Kulin. I have a feeling I know where this is going. I don't want to betray your trust, and because I trust you as a friend. And he's like, all right. And that was the end of my story on Ganarin's side. From then on, I was working with Kulin, trying to eavesdrop on what was going on. I heard the Blackhearts were trying to do something, and I know the Knights, we all got together. I know that Sir Jared was posted up in the Coven all night. Before closing night, when all this went down.
He, with a bunch of knights, went to the Black Hearts that night. And
Well,
started talking trash or something, and
that
they got their name.
was the night afterwards.
Was that the night afterwards?
Yeah.
Well, they got their
Sir
names
Jared-
scratched out of the ledger, and that was
Well-
I was there for that, and it was just so cool to see consequences in park.
Yeah, Sir Jared and Sir Reyna both got that. That's the night of the heist. Got kicked out of the Black Hearts, absconded, like
Vanished.
scratched out. Sir Jared worked his way up in the Black Hearts to I think like rank 4 or 5.
Really?
Yeah,
So it was a big deal.
yeah. And if you know anything about Jared's backstory, and if you know Jared outside of park, you know that he is my son outside of park, and he is also Sir Jared is Shadowhunter is Kazan and Renaelin's son.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So that's kind of a big deal because Kazan and Renaelin are Blackhearts through and through.
I have
So
a quick question for you. What is your wife's
Okay.
real name? I've always called her Renaelin. I thought that was her real name.
Marilyn.
Ah. Sorry.
So speaking of Marilyn, that night they were hosting the VIP dinner party
Yeah.
in Vander's Keep, and I get a text from her saying, "Hey, you should come up to Vander's Keep." I grabbed some extra food and I was going to take it to Ganarin because he's a poor college student outside of park, so we were making arrangements to get him some food out, and so I was looking for him. And this is when everything was started going down. I went looking for Ganarin. No Rangers were anywhere. So I'm like, okay, I go down to the Coven and no Coven members are there. Just Sykes. And then I see some acolytes come in. I'm like, what the heck? And I watched this for a minute. I'm like,
We haven't seen acolytes in a while.
yeah. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? And then one of them uses telekinesis on Sykes. I'm like, oh, okay, that's not bad. I start running. I'm just go find Kulin, and on the way there, I see Aran. I'm like, Aran, somebody's stealing Restgiver right now. You need to go. He's like, what? I don't know. Okay, Sykes is down. Oh, okay. Then he went to go investigate. I went and found Kulin.
Is this why you're carrying food the whole time?
Yes. Because I'm looking for Canarin. Like, I gotta get this. And unfortunately, it all got crushed, but it was just cake, so it was fine.
It was worth it.
And then Kulin just lost her cool because not only were the Rangers were involved in this heist because they had the Rangers impersonate the Blackhearts at their hovel. They got the
Reiner was
Bard's
dressed
Guild.
as Hef, right?
I don't remember who was.
Hef.
I don't remember who was dressed as who. I just know that they were all impersonating Blackhearts at the hovel, but they got the Bard's Guild involved to be a distraction to get the Coven members away from there. So they had this all planned at 10:45. They were going to have this variety show, and that all the Coven members needed to be there. And Kulin's like, I need to go. They're like, oh no, you need to stay. This is going to be great. And then I come running up, hey, somebody's still in Restgiver. And she's like, oh, okay. So that was, yeah. And eventually she found out where it was. It was the Blackhearts. They still denied it. At the end of the night, she called a war on the Blackhearts. Well, a prank war.
But that's kind of cool. Like, I feel like in past seasons we've had guild animosity, but this felt more real.
Yeah.
Because of our ranking up in our guilds, I feel a lot more allegiant to the pirates than I have been. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But this guild war kind of feels serious.
Yeah. And the next night when I checked in with Kulin, she's like, I know where it is. I have an idea. I have a plan on how to get it back, but I'm not going to tell anybody because they were trying to keep it secret. Look what happened to them. There was only one person I know of that she told, and she told him in completely confidence, and that was me. And I haven't told anybody else. And
Nice.
it goes along where we know yeah, I know that the other, the World Walker Weekly and the World Talkers, they said, talking to them, like, we know you have these places to communicate, but we're going to tell you this in strict confidence not to spread it.
Yeah.
So,
You know, this whole story kind of, I feel like the finale of Lore had a lot of situations where I have allegiances to many people, and now I have to choose one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can think of so many examples of this. One of them was this heist. Another one, Mr. Smibs, you know, getting attacked by those vampires. After that happened, I felt the closest to the vampires in the circus. I'd become friends with the three of them, and they're about to leave for Dayloth now, and they're saying their goodbyes, and I'm like, well, are we really friends anymore? Because you just basically killed one of the pirates who I'm friends with, and I didn't chew them out, but I definitely didn't like. It wasn't the goodbye that I had imagined. I would have imagined, and I feel bad because Goose, you know, he came up to me separately and he's like, "Well, you're a good friend, and here's a gem that represents my fear." And I'm like, oh, "Thank you, but you shouldn't have done that." Come on.
I have a similar situation where choosing who to be loyal to is really difficult. You know, something I spent a lot of time this season doing was cracking the Gazette ciphers and finishing that quest. And then also joining another group in town who's not affiliated with the guild that you can solve riddles and get trust to join. And I don't know if I should say the names of these two groups or not. So I'm just going to leave it. But you can't, according to their own in-park rules, you can't be loyal to both groups, even though they have the same goal in town. And I was so proud of, like, you know, solving all these riddles and finally getting to the end of finding out who this group was and becoming a part of it. And then having this choice. I've spent more time going back and forth between the leaders of these two groups, trying to, like, decide, okay, which one's better? Which one do I agree with more? They're both trying to do the same thing, but they have different methods of doing it.
I have a feeling I know which groups you're talking about.
Yeah, I see you have a rose. And so, like, figuring out who manages the situations better, but they both have really good arguments and they both have weaknesses. I'm like, can't we just bring you together to just unify? And
that's good conflict to have. I'm glad Evermore is doing that purposefully.
Yeah. It's really, really added a lot of depth to my experience in the town.
One more example of this. I became friends with Eddie, and, like, you know, learning secrets, learning her real name and things like that, which she said no one else knows. So that was kind of cool. But then she told me that she was going to try and bite Bartholomew, which, Robin, you know that we had to build trust with him as part of the Pirates Guild. And I feel like I have a connection with Bartholomew. So I'm like, well, crap. I told Atea that I wouldn't tell him, but I have to tell him to save him. So I did it in a roundabout way. I mean, what's she going to do now?
Very rough decisions. I really loved getting to know Marzi a lot more this season. Her character is absolutely amazing. That's another one where I spent a lot of time getting trust, and it killed me to not be in park on some of the nights where her character's storyline had some big events. Like, she really grew a lot this season, and I wasn't there for those tableaus. And
you
so
know the bad things that happened?
Yeah.
I don't think we've mentioned it yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Marzipan Weather is the proprietor of the Copper Confectionery. That's the sweet shop or bakery in Evermore. And she used to be there with her husband, Henry Werther. And they just adore each other. They're both super sweet characters.
So
just
cool, yeah.
So happy
and love.
Just
And
really sweet.
If you ever talk to them together, the first thing they say is they love cooking and they want to have lots of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Henry had to leave unexpectedly. So he's been back in London, I think. Out of character, that actor had some medical issues that he just had to stop performing for a while. So we've had Marzi for a long time without Henry, and she really loves him and is worried about him. And now that Evermore is floating in the endless sea, she can't, see him. And I don't remember who provided her the information. Was it a card reading or a divination that Henry was sick?
There's
Yes.
two sources.
It was Tawny was the first one to kind of do a reading that said that Henry was beginning to get sick.
Cassandra had a dream about a man that we found out was Henry.
That's
That
right.
he was in the forest and he was like alone, and he said, I believe the words were, "When we said goodbye, I didn't know it'd be forever."
Yeah, that's right. That was touching.
And then I think Zodi did the final reading that said that Henry was dying.
Yeah. And Marzy's just so devoted to Henry, and there's a lot I can't share because she asked me to not share things, but her story about Henry is really interesting. I recommend you get to know her character, get her trust, and find out more about her relationship with him and more about their history. There's some really cool storylines there. And so she wanted to help Henry, but she couldn't obviously go back to England. And so Lucius told her that they could make a contract. If I understand correctly, correct me because I wasn't there that night, but I was told that he would make it so Henry wouldn't die in exchange for Henry having all of Lucius would have all of Henry's memories of Marzy and Evermore. And so Henry wouldn't recall Marzy at all, which is such a hard thing for this couple that's just so close, and she's just so sweet and you just love her. And so now Lucius has all those memories. And so I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out in Park. Is Lucius still in town? He is, right?
I think he's decided to stay.
And so now he's got all of Henry's memories. Is that meaning that he's not going to have feelings for Marzy? I don't know. Or is Henry going to stumble into Evermore somehow and need to find his history again with Marzy? That would be amazing to see. I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Now, Henry, so the deal was that Henry wouldn't die?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that mean he's immortal now?
I think it was just that his sickness would be fixed.
Oh, they should have gone for immortality. That was a bad loss.
That would be hard though, because Henry wouldn't have picked it for himself, and then you'd condemn him to seeing all of his loved ones
No,
die.
we just got to get Marzy to be immortal as well, and they can have eternity to learn who each other are again.
There we go.
Fall in love.
So who knows the details? There was a night that I had heard about that Marzy was really brave and pulled a gun on someone. Does anybody know that story?
Oh, the Wendigo.
Yes. What was that?
So this was, man, I don't know all the details, but there was a Wendigo in the park, and
that was Drake's last night, right?
Yeah. Drake saved Madame Daughtry. He saved her from the Wendigo. And when Marzy found out that there was a Wendigo in town, she was given a gun, I think. She was going around town with it.
Yeah, the Wendigo was actually a creature that had been following the circus. So the circus knew about it. They just hadn't told us until suddenly we're like, there's a Wendigo going around wanting to eat people. Slight problem.
Anyway, loved Marzy. Get to know her. Ask her a backstory. That could be said for any character, honestly.
Yes.
Every single character in Park has amazing backstories, and you uncover so much richness by getting to know them deeper.
That's the whole story of Evermore. Get to know people. Get to know the Evermorians. Get to know your fellow World Walkers, because most all of us that come in character, we have some kind of backstory, and you got to earn our trust.
That's true. There was one night there was a new World Walker that I didn't recognize, and Pitt was talking to him with another friend of ours, JJ. And they're like, Robin, you got to come meet this guy. And so I thought they were introducing me to a new character in Park. And it's funny because I was noticing his costume. It's like, well, it doesn't seem to be the caliber that Evermore usually does, but okay.
It was still pretty good. So that was Sir Cormac, but not as Sir Cormac. I forget his new character's name, but he's
druid of some kind.
a mossy druid.
I was interviewing him with my notebook, writing down all the details, like where are you from and what brought you to Evermore and what motivates you and who do you trust? And eventually JJ caught my eye and she's like, he's a World Walker, right? It's like,
but there's no reason you can't do that to a World Walker.
No, it's true. It's true. But I'm fairly driven as far as the town plots. I always want to be figuring out the puzzles of relationships and things. And so I'm more focused on the actors usually when I'm in park. So it was just kind of funny.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. If you want to leave feedback or suggestions, we'd be glad to receive it. Our email is evercastweekly@gmail.com. And if you see us in park, come up and introduce yourselves. We love meeting new people and experiencing Evermore together. Thank you.
We want to space out the trauma that we cause.
You got it. Oops. You're going to make me blush.
Yeah, what's your email, Audrey?
I'm going to send it to you because it's embarrassing.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, come on. It can't be that embarrassing.
I made it when I was 8.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Audrey. I'll keep that secret forever.
You guys know I'm horribly challenged with this garbage.
I will just say, like, this was like we'll explain how to do it correctly without putting anybody in danger.
I'm not gonna lie, lore was like one big blur.
Wait, you got to say we're not officially affiliated with the park.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
Thank you, Sly. Robin?
I believe.
I was waiting to.
Is that all right?
That's good.
Okay.